Hello and welcome to the Michael Calderin Show. We're so glad you could join us. It's wonderful to be back online. And today's special guest, Belinda Stohner from Baby B Strings. And we're going to talk to her about her well accomplished career, her music, and something new that has come about. Belinda, how are you?
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. You and I have worked together for many, many years. You as a musician while I've been officiating at the ceremonies.
Yes, I've been so lucky to have met you, and you even did officiated our wedding.
That's true. I did get to officiate your wedding as well. How long has that been now?
Just over 3 years. We got really lucky that it happened early 2019 before the pandemic.
Right.
Could have
It's hard to
been
believe.
it could have been a little, very different outcome had we waited, several more months.
That's true. Although it was outdoors, so I think we were practicing social distancing anyway.
Yeah, South Florida.
That's right. So let's start talking about your career and kind of how'd you get started? I mean, you are a very talented musician,
Oh, thank
and
you.
you're a great person, and the two
Um,
go hand in hand.
I would say really my mother really loves music, and so she always had music on and encouraged us to be involved, even just singing to Disney movies or in the car, we were listening to like Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles and Elvis. But we, as part of our um, academic life in Kansas, we played piano. When I say we, me and my sister, we started on piano and then took up violin when I was almost in fourth grade. And I was just
Yeah.
very fortunate that our town that we grew up in had a very strong support of the arts, and so I was always very heavily involved with that. And I was in our youth symphony, and I ended up coming to Miami for music school, and I studied music business at Frost. Now it's called Frost, and just stayed. I fell in love with the city. I couldn't leave.
And the city fell in love with you.
Yeah, and so I've just been, building my career here, um, freelancing, teaching, which I love to do. You meet so many cool people like yourself and see so many cool venues and work with amazing, talented people. And I just love being here.
Okay. All right. So you finished the formal education program.
Yes, yes, in the music school. So, uh, University of Miami is actually really cool that it has a fairly progressive music program. So you can study music engineering if you want to do, sound for live shows or recording studios or any of that. You can learn music business if you want to be on the marketing side or do royalties and publishing or management. You can learn film scoring if you're into that, or even pop commercial songwriting. So you don't have to just do performance or education, which is the more traditional route. And so that's kind of one thing that really drew me to the school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I know, and this is probably something you wouldn't bring up on your own, but I know that you have done a lot of charity events and done a lot of musical events for nonprofits.
Yeah. And uh, that was really eye opening for me because, when you go to school and you study, they don't really talk about your audience and doing outreach, or at least when I went to school, that wasn't really emphasized. And so I was really just looking for opportunities to play, kind of on a more grassroots level, a little bit less formal. And so I got invited by the Lotus House to play at some of their fundraisers, and I even played for the women and children residents that stay there. And it's a really different experience because one, it's much more intimate. They're very close to you as opposed to you being on a stage and people are out in the audience. But a lot of people that have that I kind of took for granted, had never really seen live music played like that, whether it was violin or just classical music or, even kind of in that capacity. So I don't know. It was just a very different experience. And that was the first time. This was probably in the, mid to late 2000s. And I just really enjoyed it. So I always kept that in the back of my mind, and I played at Jackson Hospital in the NICU. And that was a similarly cool experience to just have music in a non-formal setting.
And I believe you also played when I was the chief operating officer at the Broward Partnership for the Homeless. I think you came and played for us at an event also.
Yeah, that was really great too. Just yeah, all these kind of it's that's the only way I can explain it. It's a different experience. I think people seem very appreciative, and you just bring a different element to where you wouldn't normally think about there being music, or at least
Right,
live music.
right. And especially, to your point, to an audience that perhaps wouldn't normally have an opportunity to be a part and actually see a live musician playing.
Yeah, definitely to that point because at the end of the day, music is about having a connection and making people feel a certain way, right? So it doesn't matter if you are the richest person on earth or if you don't have anything. We all just want to experience that side of humanity.
Right, right. And what would you say have been some of the highlights of your career? Because I know you have played with some pretty big celebrities.
Yeah, I'm still riding on the high from I guess it would have been 2 years ago. The Super Bowl happened in Miami. And I was very fortunate to be the orchestra leader and the contractor for Shakira's orchestra. So I got to play with
Amazing.
Shakira, and we rehearsed with her for 2 or 3 weeks. And all those dancers that behind her worked so hard, and it was cool just to see how that operation goes down because it's definitely a different way of working than most classically trained people are used to.
Yeah, I mean, how many classically trained musicians, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, classically trained musicians.
Okay. Um, have had the opportunity that you've had, Super Bowl with Shakira. I
I mean,
mean,
it's completely crazy because it's one of the biggest stages on in the world, aside from maybe like the World Cup, but they broadcast it all over the world. And it's all, do I dare say it's kind of like an informal holiday in America, right? Even if you don't care about football, everyone gets together, has a party, watches the game, has a good time. So yeah, it was amazing. For me, when I was a kid, I would watch the Super Bowl just to watch the halftime show because I didn't really care about football then. But I
right.
was just like, oh, who's playing? What's the show going to be? So it was a really really cool thing for me to be able to do.
Okay. And have you had any other highlights that match that, or
I'll tell you, it's going to be really hard to top. I mean, I have some really cool things going on right now that I'll tell you in a second. But one thing that always stuck with me is that I got to play in front of Paul McCartney and Lizzo and Jay-Z and Beyonce. They all saw me play. And so to me, that's just like mind blowing. How many people get to play for Paul McCartney and they're watching you? So just for me to take that in, like I feel really blessed in that respect. But, you
wow.
know, upward and onward, we keep moving on. Now I'm working on promoting our new this short film that I co-created with an amazing animator called named Carla Caprali and Oscar Fuentes, who is also known as the Biscayne Poet. And just kind of organically over the pandemic, we collaborated and made this short film that's it was just screened at the Miami Film Festival. It's been shown at a gallery in Finland, London International Short Film Festival. So kind of, it's been picking up a lot of success. I mean, it's very exciting because it's a new thing for me. I've never been involved with anything like this.
Wow. Now
Yeah.
that's quite a switch. That's quite a
Yeah.
switch, right?
Super
Going
exciting.
from music to co-creating a short film.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really cool because a lot of times in movies or films, the movie is made first and the screenplay and everything, and then a composer comes in and writes a score to it. And this way, it was kind of reverse in that I had a recording, and then the Biscayne poet came and did some narration over it, and then the animation was to what we recorded. So I kind of think of it as a music video. I don't know if you would, others would see it that way, but me being a musician, the music came first. So I always kind of consider it a little bit like a music video.
Okay. Excellent. And I think you have a clip for us?
Yes. So since this is mostly audio, I'm just gonna play a little bit of the music.
The fire truck made a right turn on my street. I kept my distance behind it. I was wondering whose house was on fire. No smoke. 1 block? 2 blocks? There was an ambulance parked outside my house. I heard other sirens in the area. The fire truck stopped right in front of my house. I parked, got out, and asked one of the firefighters what was burning. He said no fire, just a Hispanic male found dead in his living room. What house? The yellow one, he said, pointing at my house. At that time, 2 paramedics walked out of my front door with a bed on wheels and a body inside a black bag. Wait! I screamed. I ran to take a look at the body inside the bag, my heart racing. I unzipped.
So that's just a little taste of what you will see once we release the film. It's still making the rounds at various film festivals, so we won't formally release it until that's complete. It's called Light.
You ended it right at the spot.
I know. Well, we can't give it all away.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
Yeah, the film is called Light, and you can see the trailer and other films that I've been working on at www.babybstrings.com/light.
So that's www.babybstrings.com/light.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we're definitely going to have to check that out. Now, of course, I want to see the rest of that,
right?
film. You left me hanging on the cliff here.
I know. Can't give it all away.
Now, if I remember, weren't you also involved in a book?
Yes. So this is kind of an ongoing project called Musical Fairy Tales. It's kind of Peter in the Wolf style in that we use different stories like Three Little Pigs, Rumpelstiltskin, of that sort, and we pair it with different pieces of classical music. So kind of the one that we've been working the hardest on right now is called The Three Little Pigs Answer Beethoven 5. So it's Beethoven's Fifth Symphony paired with The Three Little Pigs. And
wow.
So you hear pieces of symphony, and it acts as like a soundtrack to underscore the story. We all know the Three Little Pigs. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's very educational in nature. But when I was a kid, I watched a lot of like Tom and Jerry, and
one of my favorites.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry and Bugs Bunny even did this, and you can even think of Fantasia in this, where they would take a classical piece, right, and then they'd put a cartoon to it. So when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, this is a funny cartoon, but you watch it so many times that you know the piece. And later I realized, like, oh, that's really like a real concerto or an etude or an opera, right? And so by then you already know the piece. That's kind of the concept behind it. You're learning, but like in a really different kind of fun way.
Wow. And I know with the musical Fairy Tales, you guys were doing like readings at different places, weren't you?
Yeah, so our first performance was at the Prez Art
And I
Museum.
apologize because this is all from memory. So,
No, for sure, for sure. This has been quite several years now. Considering the pandemic's already been like 2 years.
right.
um, but we did, the Miami-Dade Public Library downtown, a few times, which was really cool because obviously, storytelling in a library, but with music. We did a family fun day at the Prez Art Museum in downtown Miami, which was cool. We did the Miami Book Fair several years back. So, it's kind of interesting to be a musician in more literary world, right? Because I'm already in the music world. It's fine. I love it. It's great. But to kind of collaborate and mix disciplines is neat. And actually, That's how I met Oscar Fuentes, the Biscayne poet that narrated on the short film. That was kind of how we met and our first working together.
And it's been very successful.
Yeah, we hope to keep doing more stories. We do have some versions in Spanish too. So our narrator is his name is Oscar Bustillo, and he's Cuban American, and so he was able to obviously do the stories in Spanish as well. Those are all available for free on YouTube. I believe it's youtube.com/babybstrings. But I'm sure you can also just go to musicalfairytales.com and download those for free. So you can have those for your kids to listen to or adults too. That's fine.
Oh, that's great. Musicalfairytales.com.
Yes.
Okay. And let's talk about your family background.
My father was from Southeast China and my mom's from Hong Kong. But really my father kind of immigrated as, I guess, what would have then been a refugee when he was like a teenager to Hong Kong. So we really kind of consider, they spoke Cantonese at home. And so my father was part of a wave of Chinese immigrants that came to San Francisco in the 60s, I believe. No, the late 70s. Yeah, in the 70s. And eventually he ended up in Kansas. Someone introduced him to my mother, and then that's how we ended up in Kansas.
So your mom was living in Kansas at the time?
No, she lived in Canada. She got set up. Her cousin, I believe, was my dad's friend, and she was like, "You should come meet this guy," And so she convinced my mom to come down from Canada to come meet my dad.
Wow.
They hit it off, and we ended up in Kansas. And they opened a restaurant together, so I grew up in a restaurant.
Chinese restaurant?
Presumably, yes. Yes, it was Chinese. I always tell people it's McDonald's. No, it's not.
Yeah, right. And you are fluent in Cantonese?
Oh, I wish. When you grow up in Kansas, there's not a lot of Chinese people around to talk to. My mom used to say that we would go to Hong Kong for like a few weeks at a time when I was younger, and I would come back speaking just like only Chinese. And then eventually, you lose it. That being said, my parents always spoke Cantonese at home, so I do understand it at, maybe like a grade school level. I could watch Peppa Pig and fairly, understand most everything that they say in Cantonese. But speaking is much more difficult if you've ever tried it. Is challenging. I would like to learn and get better
I have
at
enough
it.
of a challenge trying to order Chinese food.
It's on my bucket list. Get better at Chinese.
But I remember first meeting you, and I certainly don't remember how long it's been, but it's been, as this generation would say, it's been a minute.
Yes.
It's been a long time. It's been years. And I can remember us talking one of the first times, and I always ask people where they're from, because I don't, it's hard to find people in Florida that are like originally from Florida.
Yeah,
And
they're like unicorns.
right. And I remember you saying Kansas. And I remember following up with the question of something along the lines like, is there a big Chinese community in Kansas?
No, but it's kind of funny because now my mother has retired to Nevada and she has kind of an enclave of Chinese people from Kansas that have retired in Nevada.
Really?
It's not huge, but it's more than you would think. It's really bizarre. I'm sure there's still
Wow.
loads of Chinese people in Kansas and probably more now than there were when I was growing up. But yeah, far and few between.
So, that's right. Your family doesn't have the restaurant anymore.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Okay.
We've all
And
retired. We've all moved to warmer climates.
yeah, yeah. And what else would you want us to know about your career or even about Belinda personally?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know. That's a very loaded question.
It is, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
See,
just check. I was gonna
you,
say
you,
just check us out at babybeestrings.com. You know, we're always doing new things, trying to change perceptions of what people might think violin or classical music is or can be or should be. What were you gonna say?
well, yeah, well, I was going to say, first of all, um, you're a very humble and modest person. So that's why I have to toot your horn for you.
Oh, thank you. Keep going. Keep going.
Because you've done amazing. You're a very talented musician. I recommend you all the time, and it's always a pleasure working with you. You're always pleasant to work with, and I've never heard you say no, whether it was to help play something at a charity event, whether it was coming on my show. You know, you always step up to the plate, and you always do the right thing.
Oh, thank you.
And those are really admirable qualities. And you know, I have learned over the years to really have a great deal of respect for musicians, whether they're classically trained or you know other musicians. There's a great deal of talent, but there's a great deal of practice and training and education that goes into what you do. And I think people take that for granted. And I don't think they take it for granted intentionally. I think they just don't know.
Yeah. Thanks for recognizing that because um a lot of times and this is like music in general and performance in general, you know, even in sports where a lot of times you just see the end result and you might just be performing like a 2-minute song, but the amount of rehearsal and practice that went into executing that 2 minutes is probably like hours on end, right? So part of our job as practice is to make it look easy, and you might think like, well, I'm just paying for like 2 minutes. No, you're actually working for the years and probably decades of practice and dedication to lead you to that point to be able to execute that.
Right, right, and not just it makes me think to um, I forget who said it, but it has held true, particularly in the wedding industry with a lot of the professionals that I work with, and sometimes you're talking to a potential client, and you tell them how what the fee is going to be, and how often have you heard like, well, you're just playing for 30 minutes.
Yeah, but 30 minutes is not a long time if you're taking a nap. It's a really long time if you're trying to hold your breath or go running. So time is
Great
very
analogy.
relative, right?
Yeah,
That's the
Yes,
first thing. But like you said, like there, people just don't know how much preparation and time goes into executing it.
absolutely. And the one thing I heard some time ago, which is a really true statement, and that is, if it takes me 30 minutes to do a great job, it's because it took me years of practice and experience. You owe me for the years, not the minutes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think also if
Yeah.
you talk to most professional musicians, even if they weren't really formally trained, they've been doing it long enough that they could have gone to medical school. So if you're willing to pay a ton of money to, have heart surgery or something, and I'm not trying to belittle, doctors or anything, but I'm just saying that like I I've been doing this since pretty much since I was 5. Maybe not at the level that I am now, but I would I've had that many years of experience under my belt to warrant,
Right.
what you're paying for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then some.
Exactly.
And then some.
Plus the fact that
Um,
time is a resource that nobody can get more of. So,
that's true. Whether you have money or not, you can't buy more time.
time waits for no one.
Amen. And what are some of the things that are still on Belinda's bucket list?
I would like to travel to Easter Island. It seems amazing. I've never been to South America. There's a whole list of skills that I would like to learn or get better at. I have a very long list of confectionery that I would like to bake or make. So I don't really sit still well. I always have a new interest and I always want to do more things. I'd rather do things than not do things if I can help it. So
Right.
I could go on forever.
Okay. So there's still a fair amount of things on your bucket list
Yes.
that you
And I'm
want
sure
to
I
do.
will keep adding to it. I'll find new books that I want to read. I'll find new hobbies that I want to pursue, new skills I want to improve. So I'm just quite a curious person.
Okay. And do you find yourself like in a circle always with musicians, or are there people in your circle that are not musicians?
No, definitely a lot of not musicians. I mean, there are, a lot of my friends are also my colleagues. I'm very fortunate that I have friends that I've met that are very good at inviting other people to their circle. So, when we get together, you're always meeting someone new. And my husband is not a musician, so that helps as well. And yeah, you know, I like meeting new people, as I'm sure you do also. You know,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
And what are some of the upcoming kind of short-term projects for you?
Well, I am working with a man named Mark Magellan. He is, I believe, the head of humanities. Don't quote me on that at Miami-Dade College, but he's also a guitarist and a wonderful person and super talented. And we are doing some kind of classical music remixes. I can't quite give it away, and it's not quite fully developed yet, but we'll hopefully be coming up
Another
with some.
cliffhanger.
I know. It's always I've got like 10 irons in the fire. So,
Okay,
you'll know when it comes out.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. And how about long-term goals?
We'll see what happens. I think the film thing will continue to do more films. I know at least Carla Caprali is working on a 4-part project with Oolite Arts. Um, so she has invited us back to work on one of those films. And musical fairy tales. We have like 2 or 3 other stories in the works. So, those will continue on and hopefully be successful as well.
All right. And do you think you'll ever get a chance to to play with Shakira again?
Oh, I hope so. If only she would have us back. Or any other artists. I just collaboration is always fun, especially if it's of a different genre. So if she would love to have us back, I will be the first one to, I'll be the first one in line.
Would you say that classical music can pretty much fit in anywhere?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the term classical music should be more broad than maybe some people think it is. Obviously it's Beethoven and Mozart, but if you think about the soundtrack to Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones or Star Wars, like they still have orchestras behind them. So is that like neoclassical music? That's kind of up for debate if you want to add that into that category. I know that Gnarls Barkley, which is like CeeLo Green and Danger Mouse, that collaboration, they would always have like a small orchestra behind them. So Bjork was just in Miami like several weeks ago, and she had an orchestra behind her. So it just kind of depends what you categorize as classical music, right? Just because it's played with a violin or a cello, does that make it classical music? I don't know.
That's a good question. I never thought of it that way, but I guess if I see an orchestra, and it's my own ignorance because I'm not a scholar as it relates to music. I think of classical music when I see classical musicians. But the reality is, even with a lot of the screenplays and different movies, the actual music that's been played has been more modern, or a different what's the word I'm looking for? I guess we could say a different genre,
Yeah.
different genres, right, over time.
When my string quartet plays Nirvana or Bon Jovi or Cyndi Lauper, is that classical music? Not actually, but kind of. So yeah, you could reinvent it, and it can be anywhere that music belongs, right?
Yeah.
I always tell people classical music is actually all around you if you know what it is or where to find it. Even the ice cream truck down the street is usually playing like Fur Elise by Beethoven, right?
Yeah.
So even ringtones often are like a Mozart, based on Mozart or Bach. So it really is everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. See, now I'm going to have a even different perspective now.
Yeah.
On music.
Yeah. Or also in car commercials a lot, or sports commercials, or any.
And I guess it's safe to say that there really is. The two are separate in terms of classical music and classical musicians.
Yeah, I mean it's just a style, right? So I would say that that's why I always say we're classically trained. Not necessarily that we're classical musicians, but we grew up playing a certain style of music and with certain rules and standards that are traditional to the genre. But like I said, we play a lot of rock music, pop music, jazz music as well. Yeah, so that's kind of where cross genre in that way, I suppose you could say.
Okay. Anything else you want to let our listeners know?
That you're the best officiant and they should always hire you for their wedding or anything that needs officiating.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on. This is really special.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for accepting the invite. I know, particularly nowadays, time is a commodity that we really don't have. I thought it might take a little longer to get you on the show. But
now that we can do it from the comfort of our own home or office,
that's true. That's true.
The world is our oyster.
That's true. That's true.
Anything
And
can happen.
I hope that you'll come back regularly and give us updates. I think once the listeners, have an opportunity, those who haven't tuned in yet have an opportunity to hear this interview, I think people are going to really want to learn more about Belinda.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And again, I want to give out your website, which is www.babybstrings.com, and you can listen to music. Can they download from your site?
From musicalfairytales.com, they can
Okay.
download the stories and music. I think on my website it's just streaming.
Okay.
There's videos and things, but I think most people like to stream these days. Doesn't bog down
Okay.
their device.
And certainly, if they're preparing an event, whether it's a wedding, a funeral, a life celebration, memorial, baptism, any type of event, corporate event, and you want the best of the best, then you will definitely get in touch with Belinda.
Call Baby B.
That's it. I love it. And thank you again for coming on the show. And we never did get an answer to that question about one thing that you would want the listeners to know. I thought I'd give it one more shot and visit back on that
Life's
before I
too
end.
short not to eat good food.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from me on that one. Thank you so much. I love it. And again, thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
No problem. Thank you.
And to our listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in. If you want to listen to a past show, you can certainly look up the Michael Calderin Show on Anchor, Spotify, and iTunes, and listen to previous shows. If you have an idea for a show, send me a message, and let's see if we can make it happen. I'm working on another special guest that's going to be coming on later in the week for another great show. So we thank you so much for tuning in to the Michael Calderin Show.